Hey everybody, I'm Cody.
And I'm Brent.
And we are the Hugonauts, here to review for you the best science fiction books of all time. This week, we are reviewing The City and the City. And make sure you like, subscribe, follow, download, whatever you're doing to listen to us, so you don't miss the next episode, which is going to be on Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. City on the City is by China Miéville, and Brent's going to tell you all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, won the Hugo in 2010, and China Miéville is a British author who has set out to write a book in every genre, which is really interesting. But this book he wrote as a police procedural for his mom, who died in 2007. So this book is sort of like his homage to her, which is just really cute and sweet. So
it was her favorite genre.
Yeah. So this is a detective noir novel, and it's set in two linked but mysteriously separate cities. Inspector Borlu is a smart, likable, no-nonsense detective from Beszel, a city that exists in the same geographic space as the foreign city of Ul Qoma. But despite sitting in the same place, with many streets and even some buildings in both cities, the two are fierce rivals, and there's very harsh penalties for any residents who breach or cross to the other city. And so Borlu is assigned to investigate the murder of a young woman, and it quickly proves to have, interested parties across both cities. And so as he digs deeper into the case, we're also sort of exposing the workings of the two cities, the city, and the shadowy, all-powerful agents of breach who patrol the border and arrest, extradite, or even execute people who breach that boundary. So that's what we got.
Yeah, it is an excellent read. I give it a 4 out of 5. I feel like it's a really challenging and nuanced socio-political commentary, and just kind of commentary on how we build societies in general as humans. And it's also wrapped up in the detective noir mystery novel wrapper, which is also compelling. It's a great book.
Yeah, for sure. I also give it a 4 out of 5. I think the resolution to the mystery is like perfect in ways that I just we can't even really talk about without spoiling it. But I'll just say, man, the ending is like simultaneously everything you want it to be, but also not at all what you're expecting, and so surprising, and just it's great. And so just it landed such a big message in an interesting way. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars.
To both of the points we made, as a police procedural and the world building mystery, when you're combining those, Miéville's combining those two things here, and in such a great way, right? He's doing this murder mystery that is executed really well. I'm sorry, I'm being really careful because this one is very hard not to spoil. So we're going to try. We're going to not do very it. Hard. We're going to not do it. We're going to try hard not to do it, and we're going to cut out anything that was a spoiler. So don't worry. But it's tough. We gotta dance around some things because we got to be nuanced like Miéville. He's got the mystery of the detective novel. Woman. Yeah. But then also, I haven't seen as commonly mystery from world building, like an arc of mystery.
Yeah, what are the rules? The world building. How does this work? What the hell is breach? What is happening here? How does this work? And that almost becomes like the bigger mystery, that as we solve the case, Miéville's never breaking the narrative arc to tell us how the world works. It's just as Borlu investigates and figures out what's happening with the mystery, we, as the reader, get to see the pieces of how, the rules of the city and just this very interesting, very different world work. And so we're really solving the bigger mystery as we get to pick up pieces along the way as Borlu solves the murder mystery.
Right. So there's two mysteries for the audience. And Miéville just gives it to us in pieces, like dialogue, bits of Borlu's thoughts, because Borlu's the narrator, and actions in the book, events that are happening. And so we're seeing these things about these two cities. That's strange. Wonder what's going on there. And then that resolves itself in its own little arc, and you slowly start to figure that all out. It's ingenious writing. Frankly.
I absolutely agree.
And which is also, to be said, I don't know if you felt the same way as I did, but I guess I would call this quote, and as I said in my review, like more challenging than a lot of science fiction or just literature I read in general. I feel like it's one of those books that you kind of can't miss a word or a sentence, or you might be lost. Like it really requires you to pay full attention to it and use and be enveloped in it, using your imagination and feeling it, versus other books that even though they might have a lot of detail about the science or the whatever, like you can kind of like zone out for a bit and come back and you're still in it with the characters. I thought this one was this is a challenging, like, good literary read.
I agree with you. It definitely felt literary. I'm not sure that it felt like it didn't. I didn't feel myself. Sometimes I don't know. I read some James Joyce last year, and it was like, good Lord, I really had to like do a lot of work to read that book. I didn't feel like I had to do a lot of work, but I do see what you mean about. I agree that it's for sure like a lot of literary elements, and there's a lot to think about for sure. The stuff to think about happened so organically along the way that it sort of just happened. It was like he like incepts us with these ideas. So yeah,
it does. If you're not paying attention, you won't be able to soak in all that detail.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but you don't need to like do any like outside research to get it.
Yes. You don't have to read someone else's commentary. Yeah,
it flows nicely if you're in it. So tell us about our narrator.
Yeah, so Inspector Borlu is our main character. He's the detective from Beszel, and he is like very much a detective noir trope, but I actually think that's a really, really good thing. So, he hates bureaucracy, and he works too much to maintain steady relationships. He sort of has these like various like broken relationships with women where they, he's too involved with his job. He cares deeply about justice and making sure the bad guys are held responsible, but he doesn't really care about rules. Like, he just wants the right outcome to happen. He doesn't really care that the rules get followed along the way. So that's all like super standard detective noir stuff, but I think it's totally necessary, and that's what we need for someone to be willing to for it to feel natural for him to be investigating this murder and sort of pushing at the boundaries of what is allowed between these two worlds, because otherwise we don't get to see what the boundaries are. So I think he's absolutely a trope, and it's perfect. He should have been. And I don't think, normally when you're reading something like, I've read this before, it feels like a pain. Not at all here. I think it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point about him being a trope, I feel like we talked about this a little bit when we were preparing. I just think it's interesting when you read any of these detective novels that they're always so singularly focused on the goal of like, he's just going to solve this one murder. And we as readers are there for the mystery and the problem solving too. So I feel like we as a culture of story absorbers think it makes sense that all murder detectives are like so doggedly pursuing these murders at like their own risk and their own like against their own self-interest in a lot of cases, and when there's danger to their bodies. And it is a trope that's really interesting in literature, but it's just funny to think about detectives in real life. I'm sure are a lot more reasonable about their work-life balance.
20 cases at once. And it's not like you get to just like go chase down this one murder for like, I feel like it's like several weeks that he like does not do any other work of any kind. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. And if any like larger power is gonna say like, get out of our way or we'll kill you, I would hope that any real life detective's like, all right, above my pay grade, I'm stepping back. I'm stepping back right away. See you later.
So, but that's why we love this trope, is because society does need people who are willing to take those risks. Like, if there's no whistleblowers, like, we don't find out that the NSA is surveilling Americans. And that's an Edward Snowden reference. Anyway, my point is, I think it is very, very rare that there are those people. They're just all in detective noir novels, so I guess that's why there's none in the real world. But anyway,
no, you're right. You're right. We do need that, and it's like, I guess it's so common in stories because it's like the maximum self-sacrifice for the group that one can do. So it's a nice like hero thing to emulate in characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Which we also have. there's a ton of characters, but we're going to spoil it if we give him too much away. But he does have two sidekicks for the first half, and then kind of for the second half they're split up, but they're both in the whole, or at least Corwy, the first one, is in the whole book, and she's his Borlu's kind of like under detective in Beszel, in the Beszel side of things, and she kind of slowly becomes more fascinated with the case as well, even though he's trying to say like, you don't need to be part of this.
He's like teaching her how to break the rules and be a cool detective. Yeah.
Sure. And so she's a fun protege character. And then also we have Dot, who is the detective on the Ul Qoma side, who is also interested in this case. And
he's like not quite as hard boiled. He's like a soft boiled egg.
Right. Yeah. Maybe he's he's like the real life detective who's like, that's above my pay grade, but he gets inspired by Borlu to be a little more heroic. So maybe he's the realistic foil to bring us to make it seem more realistic. But I just thought we'd mention them quickly because there are a ton of great characters in the book. We just can't really get into them too much because it gives it all away. That
is right. So I wanted to talk about some of the themes here. Particularly, I mean, the biggest theme is about sort of social norms. Like, we've got this place where, even more than our world, following social norms is so complicated. It's very taxing. It takes a lot of energy from everyone, and yet everyone is still doing it. And it's just this fascinating commentary on our world, right? Because we also have a ton of, very complicated systems that we all participate in, and I just think it's a really interesting thing to think about, and it raises some really, the biggest questions in the book are, who is making the rules, who enforces them, and we won't get into that, but or spoil what happens in the book, but that's really what you get to explore here, and it raises some really, really interesting questions.
I totally agree, and those questions are the reason to read the book, is to find the answers, which we can't give you here. I agree. I think that the ending is incredibly satisfying. The mystery of both things unraveling, and it just ultimately, I think one of the questions here is like, where does science fiction end and begin as a genre, right? Isn't that what the city and the city's kind of challenging?
It's like definitely towing the line. Yeah.
Right. It's like weird fiction is what it's labeled as, but that's, the new, that's a newer genre wrapping that we've started using, which makes sense to differentiate it a little bit from science fiction, because so many people think of science fiction as like space and aliens and technology. So it's good for I guess the general populace to have something different to think about, and calling it weird fiction. But I think that weird fiction does kind of adhere to the basic tenet of science fiction, which is if something about the world were different, how would humans react to that? That the kind of
tell us about our world. Yeah.
Right. The speculative fiction core is still here. And so anyone who enjoys science fiction will definitely enjoy this.
Yeah. And I'm happy that it gets to be in science fiction, because I think it's great. I'm happy for there to be a big sci-fi tent if it means we get to call City in the City sci-fi, because I love the genre.
Absolutely agree. Wonderful book. 4 out of 5 collectively between us. Definitely a read. It will be refreshing. What else should we recommend?
Yeah. Why don't you go first? I think you're going to recommend the book the last book we reviewed.
Oh yeah, I got 2 out of 3. Yeah. First of all, Left Hand of Darkness. Miéville has referenced Le Guin as one of his inspirations. Yeah. One of his inspirations, makes a lot of sense. Left Hand of Darkness has a similar feeling where you're exploring a society you're exploring like the mores of a society that's different from ours, and seeing how it works and how we would react to those things as ourselves. And also, there's a lot of similar themes in that, and a lot of stuff we talked about last week.
Yeah, if you haven't listened to the last episode, please do check it out. It's a really good one. Love Left Hand of Darkness. It's like absolutely one of the best science fiction novels of all time. So check that one out and read it if you have not yet.
What you got?
I'm gonna go with Elmore Leonard, and I'll pick. He's just an incredible detective writer, but I'll pick LA Confidential as just the one I personally like the most. He writes a lot of very hard-boiled detectives who are putting themselves at great risk to, solve things, and they're just super gripping. The dialogue is unbelievable. If you've seen any of the Elmore Leonard movies, like, they didn't write anything new. They're just dialogue from the book, and that's pretty rare. Screenwriting is like often kind of a different skill set than writing novels, because the dialogue just has to be like off the charts good in a movie. That's just how he writes. The books are incredible. So anyway, a fun departure from the world of sci-fi if you want to check out some detective novels and you liked that aspect of City in the City.
I agree, and if that's your thing, or if you like those novels, you'll definitely like City in the City.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it could be a good way in to sci-fi.
Right, and as another departure, I'm recommending *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, the nonfiction book about kind of the biology of Homo sapiens and how we've created society and civilization. And I think the crossover between the City and *Sapiens* is a lot of how Harari explores the way that we create societal norms and the fictions that we create to build societies and civilizations around. And that's what we see in City in the City in the fictional version. So overall, what a great book. Definitely read it, and definitely keep checking out more episodes.
For sure. Great to see everybody. Keep reading. We'll see you again soon.
All right. Bye.